What's up, QAA listeners?
The fun games have begun.
I found a way to connect to the internet. I'm sorry, boy. Welcome, listener, to Premium Chapter 221 of the QAnon Anonymous podcast, the Moonfall Movie Night episode. As always, we are your hosts, Jake Rakotansky,
Julian Fields,
and Travis View. So today we're going to be doing a movie night that has been long requested, at least since the movie came out last year, and mostly because it touches on a lot of topics and themes that we cover in this podcast. That is 2022's Moonfall. So this is a science fiction disaster film co-written, directed, and produced by Roland Emmerich. This is the same director who gave us classic action films like Stargate, Independence Day, The Patriot, The Day After Tomorrow, and 2012.
Man, I forgot he did Stargate, which I love, but I've showed it recently to friends who kind of missed, or recommended it to friends who sort of missed it. They were a little bit older and didn't catch it when it came out, and they said that it's not very good and doesn't hold up. So maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I have very bad news about Independence Day, The Patriot, The Day After Tomorrow, and 2012.
I fucking love most of those movies.
I love Independence Day. Yeah.
Patriot, I didn't even know he did The Patriot, but I take it or leave it.
Let's be clear. Today, we are exploring the only movie I loved. I am so in, and I will explain in a little bit why.
Okay, this will be interesting.
So, Moonfall was a critical and financial bomb. It cost at least $138 million to make and earned just $67.3 million during its box office run last year. Oof. Now, this is despite a pretty stacked cast. This includes Insidious star Patrick Wilson as a disgraced astronaut, Halle Berry as a NASA leader, Game of Thrones actor John Bradley as a conspiracy theorist, and there's also a brief but memorable cameo by Donald Sutherland as a keeper of government secrets.
I have to say, one thing that was unpleasant was how systematically Halle Berry is digitally de-aged. She often looks waxen, slightly blurry.
Oh, really? You think they de-age it?
I thought she just looks amazing for her age. Maybe you have a keener eye than myself.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think she might just be
No, they put it in the contracts now. They put it in the contracts. They just have de-aging in the contracts for some actors and or actors that are female. And this is not to say she doesn't look great. She does. But they, of course, also de-aged her. Why? Looks bad. Just kidding. I mean, this is good. This movie's good, and I liked it. And she looks great.
Moonfall is based upon a conspiracy theory that's sometimes called the Hollow Moon or Spaceship Moon. It originated with the Apollo 12 moon mission in 1969. That mission included something called the Passive Seismic Experiment. So what happened was that astronauts left a device that could detect vibrations on the moon. The primary objective of this experiment was to use the data to determine the internal structure, physical state, and tectonic activity of the moon. So once the Apollo 12 astronauts were safely backed in the command module, they crashed the lunar module into the moon's surface. The impact was the equivalent of detonating 1 ton of TNT and triggered what's known as a moonquake. The seismometers recorded the resulting vibrations, which were much bigger and lasted much longer than the scientists had anticipated.
Wait, so they really did create a moonquake?
Yes, they really did crash.
We are not allowed. We should not be allowed into space. We are so fucking dumb.
This is science at its best. You just take a giant, expensive rocket ship or lunar module, crash it into things, and see what happens. Collect all the data you can. Smashing things is science.
Okay. I was wondering if the conspiracy theorist guy, if that was based in a real conspiracy theory or anything based in fact, when he has that little line where he talks about, the moon ringing like a bell for really long time. I was like, oh, is that real? Or did they come up with that?
All of this is real. I'll explain later.
That is based on real comments. Yeah, they talked about what they found when they ran this experiment. They said that it rang like a bell for an hour. This is what they said.
Whoa. Well, I'm pilled. What are we doing here, guys? What is this?
What
are we
true.
talking about? Why
true.
are we here?
Thank you, Roland.
Yeah, I mean, this is the premise of the movie, and it turns out it's right.
Awesome.
Well, not really. So this was, in fact, a surprising result because it indicated that the moon is much less dense than originally suspected and further, it's much less dense than the Earth itself.
Because it's made of cheese.
Well, there's some boring reasons why they think that scientists believe that the moon is less dense, but this led some to speculate that it's not just that the moon is less dense, but rather it's completely hollow because it's an artificial structure.
Mm-hmm.
This hypothesis was put forward by two members of the Soviet Academy of Sciences, Michael Vassin and Alexander Sherbakov, in a July 1970 article entitled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?"
Yes, it is.
So, Vassin and Sherbakov's thesis was that the moon is a hollowed-out planetoid created by unknown beings with technology far greater to any on Earth. So huge machines would have been used to melt rock and form large cavities within the moon, with resulting molten lava spewing out onto the moon's surface.
What if we made it look like there was a big rabbit?
Well, this also explains the famous story from Buzz Aldrin when they stuck the American flag into the surface of the moon. It was heard to go, ouch! They recorded it. You could hear the moon actually going, ouch!
Yeah, it's not ring like a bell, it's scream like a bitch.
Yeah.
So this is from that 1970 article.
If you are going to launch an artificial Sputnik, then it is advisable to make it hollow. At the same time, it would be naive to imagine that anyone capable of such a tremendous space project would be satisfied simply with some kind of giant empty trunk hurled into a near-Earth trajectory. It is more likely that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines, materials and appliances for repair work, navigation, instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable this, quote, caravel of the universe to serve as a kind of Noah's Ark of intelligence, perhaps even as the home of a whole civilization envisaging a prolonged, thousands of millions of years, existence and long wanderings through space, thousands of millions of miles. Naturally, the hull of such a spaceship must be super tough in order to stand up to the blows of meteorites and sharp fluctuations between extreme heat and extreme cold. Probably the shell is a double-layered affair, the basis a dense armoring of about 20 miles in thickness, and outside it some kind of more loosely packed covering, a thinner layer averaging about 3 miles. In certain areas where the lunar seas and craters are, the upper layer is quite thin, in some cases non-existent.
They're like, these idiot Americans didn't even scratch the bottom of the sea to check.
He's like, it is a double stuffed Oreo, a crumbly chocolate outside and creamy white filling.
Now, in fairness, this theory wasn't taken that seriously. So this article was published in the Soviet equivalent of Reader's Digest and not in the scientific journal.
Yeah.
The scientific consensus says that the moon was formed by a massive impact with the proto-Earth shortly after the formation of our solar system a little more than 4.5 billion years ago. The moon's relatively low density comes from the fact that it was mostly the Earth's upper mantle and crust that was thrown up into space, and not very much of its more dense core. So that's sensible enough.
Eat at the trough, you disgusting American pig. You would believe this story.
But the whole hollow moon theory, is a lot more exciting, so some people ran with it. I also mentioned that the final act of the film, and we'll get to this, also incorporates some like ancient alien and starseed stuff, which is, pretty interesting. And it feels like kind of jammed in there, honestly, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the most interesting part of the movie. I was sitting there listening, they have it all explained by this AI in like a minute and a half, and I was like, this is a better movie. Like, I want to see this. And God, they spent so much special effects just to like recreate this like 1 minute exposition scene when you could have had the conspiracy theorist sort of laying it in gently throughout the entire movie, but hey, what do I know?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's like Roland Emmerich was like, actually, it's a movie about sons loving their fathers and divorce. There's literally a fucking son called Sonny. I mean, there's so much goodness. This movie fucking rules.
You have been listening to a sample of a premium episode of QAnon Anonymous.
We don't run any advertising on the show, and we'd like to keep it that way.
For $5 a month, you'll get access to this episode, a new one each week, and our entire library of premium episodes.
So head on over to patreon.com/QAnon Anonymous and subscribe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I love you.
Jake loves you.